I found my wife's betrayal the same way I found everything else in life, through the data. It was a Friday night, 11 p.m., and I was sitting in my home office with nothing but the blue glow of my monitor for company. Down the hall, my 4-year-old daughter, Lily, was sleeping, probably dreaming about the butterflies we'd seen at the park that morning. My wife, Irene, had texted me around 9:30 saying book club was so fun and that she'd be home soon. I wasn't doing anything extraordinary, just running a routine audit on Kindred Spark, the dating app where I worked as a senior data scientist. Bot accounts had been proliferating lately, and I developed a script to cross-reference email domains against known spam patterns. Tedious work, but necessary. The email address appeared on my screen like any other data point. My fingers stopped moving. My brain did that thing it does when it encounters an anomaly. It immediately started generating alternative explanations. San Francisco has 870,000 people. There must be dozens of Irene Callahans. Entrance. Makey. This was nothing. A coincidence. A glitch in the matrix of my comfortable life. I clicked the profile anyway. Display name Renee J. Her middle name is Jane. Age listed as 32. She's 34. We celebrated her birthday in April. I made her favorite, lemon cake with raspberry filling. Status. Married but exploring. The room tilted slighting. I gripped the edge of my desk. Profile created. March 15th, 8 months ago. Last active. 9:07 p.m., 17 minutes after she texted me about how much fun she was having at book club. And then I saw the photo. It was from Muir Woods, our anniversary trip 2 years ago. I remember taking that picture, the way the light filtered through the redwoods, how she'd laughed when I asked her to pose by the fallen log. In the dating profile version, her face was cropped out, but I recognized the silver necklace immediately. I'd bought it for her at a little jewelry shop in Sorcello. She'd cried when I clasped it around her neck. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went completely still, like some part of my nervous system had decided that motion would shatter me into pieces too small to reassemble. Then my engineer's brain kicked in. Verify, clears throat, validate, confirm. I pulled the account's device ID history, cross-referenced it with known household IP addresses. Her phone's MAC address was right there in the logs. The same phone she'd used to text me about book club. The same phone that was probably in her purse right now while she was doing God knows what with God knows who. The sign-up had occurred from our home. IFS, our bedroom specifically based on the signal strength data. 11 minutes. That's how long it took to confirm that my wife of 6 years, the mother of my daughter, had been living a double life for 8 months while I cooked dinner and changed diapers and believed every single lie that came out of her mouth. I heard the garage door rumble open. My hand moved faster than my thoughts, closing the browser tab, clearing my recent history, arranging my face into something that resembled Arnally. By the time Irene walked through the door, I was staring at a spreadsheet full of meaningless numbers, looking exactly like a man putting in extra hours on a Friday night. She came up behind me and kissed my cheek. She smelled like wine and something else. Cologne, maybe. Definitely not her usual perfume. "Miss me?" she asked, her voice light and easy. The voice of a woman who believed her secrets were safe. "Always," I said, and the word tasted like ash in my mouth. She squeezed my shoulder, her thumb tracing a small circle, an intimate gesture she'd done 1,000 times before. And I wondered how many times she'd done it while thinking out someone else. "I'm going to check on Lily and then take a shower," she said, already heading for the stairs. Long day, a shower at midnight after book club. I listened to her footsteps, the creak of our daughter's door, the soft murmur of her voice saying good night, even though Lily was already asleep. Then the bathroom door closing, the rush of water through pipes, washing away the evidence. I sat there in the blue glow of my monitor, perfectly still, while my wife showered off another man's touch 30 feet above my head. I didn't confront her. This is crucial to understand. I'm a data scientist. I don't make decisions based on incomplete information. I needed more data. And more importantly, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before I made a single move. I told Irene I had a server emergency that weekend. On a Saturday, she asked, her eyebrows doing that skeptical arch I used to find charming. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, yoga pants and an oversized sweater, holding a cup of coffee like a prop. Everything about her suddenly looked like a performance. Major outage. Half our user base can't log in. I shrugged, playing the part of the overwhelmed husband. Should be back to normal by Monday. Poor baby. She walked over, sat down her coffee, and kissed my forehead. Her lips were warm. I wondered if she'd kissed Derek Whitmore with those same lips yesterday. I'll take Lily to my mom's. Give you some quiet. That would be great. You work too hard. She ran her fingers through my hair. Promise me you'll take a real vacation soon. Just the three of us, I promise. Another lie to add to the collection. Though this time I was the one telling it, she smiled, and I smiled back, and anyone watching us would have seen a functional marriage between two people who'd figured out how to make it work. What they wouldn't have seen was the way my stomach churned, or how my hands wanted to shake, or the ice forming in my chest, where my heart used to be. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I went back to my office and started digging. See, working for a dating app comes with certain privileges. I had access to things most people never think about when they swipe right. Message histories, match data, and the big one, geolocation tracking. Kindred Spark pings your location every 15 minutes when the app is active. Users agree to this in the terms of service buried somewhere around page 47. Nobody reads the terms of service. What I found over those 48 hours nearly destroyed me. 47 matches, 23 conversations started, 12 conversations, exceeding 20 messages, 5 phone numbers exchanged, and 3 mentioned in person, verified by overlapping GPS coordinates. The first was Derek Whitmore, 38 years old, commercial real estate agent, married with 2 kids. His profile showed a confident smile and a wedding ring he hadn't bothered to remove for the photos. I tracked 11 separate meetings between them over 6 months. A boutique hotel in Solelo, a parking garage downtown, and this one felt like I between eye ribs. The park at Marina Green where I'd proposed to Irene 7 years ago. The second was Grant Ellison, 41, orthopedic surgeon, recently divorced. Hard meetings with Irene, all at his Pacific Heights condo. His messages to her were explicit in ways I won't repeat. He called her my escape. The third was Nathan Perry, 29 years old, fitness instructor, single. Only 2 meetings so far. This was new. Her messages to him had a different tone, flirtatious and exploring, like she was testing the waters of something younger and more exciting. I created a spreadsheet. Every time Irene had texted me a location over the past 8 months, I cross-referenced it with her actual GPS data at Mom's house. Actually at the Marca Hotel, room 4112, stuck in traffic on 101. Parked at Grant Ellison's building for 2 and wandering 2 hours. Book club running late. Nathan Perry's apartment, the lies stacked up like bodies at a crime scene. 47 documented instances of her telling me she was one place, while the app proved she was somewhere else entirely. but the one that broke something inside me, the one I still can't think about without my vision going red, was this taking Lily to the park. True, but Derek Whitmore's phone was there too, within 100 feet of my wife and daughter for 47 minutes. I found the messages from that day. She's playing on the sings. Irene had written to her lover. We have 20 minutes. Our daughter, our little girl, who still believed in Santa Claus and thought her parents were the center of the universe. Irene had used her as cover for an affair. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my office staring at the data, letting the cold fury hiss at something harder, something useful. Then I did what any good data scientist would do. I started investigating Derek Whitmore. It didn't take long to find a connection. He was head of commercial real estate acquisitions at Sterling Properties, the company that managed the building where Kindred Sparks' offices were located. He'd been pushing for a lease renewal meeting for months, which meant Derek Whitmore knew exactly who I was. He'd probably seen me in the elevator, smiled at me in the lobby, shaken my hand at some corporate event I couldn't remember. And the whole time he was sleeping with my wife. I created a folder on an encrypted drive and named it Exhibit A. For a long time, I just sat there staring at the folder icon, empty, waiting to be filled with the documentation of my wife's betrayal. I thought Lily, about the day she was born, how Irene had cried and laughed at the same time, how we'd both promised to give this tiny, perfect creature the best we possibly could. I thought about our wedding, dancing to that ridiculous song Irene loved, her face pressed against my chest, whispering that she couldn't believe we were actually doing this. How does a person get from there to here? How does someone look at their spouse, their child, their home, and decide it's not enough? That they need something on the side, something secret, something that turns every I love you into a lie. I didn't have answers. The data could tell me what happened, when it happened, who it happened with, but it couldn't tell me why. Why wasn't I enough? Why did she need 3 different men to feel alive? Why did she look me in the eyes every morning, kiss me goodbye, and then spend her afternoons in hotel rooms? And standing there at 300 in the morning, watching my encrypted folder blink accusingly on the scene, I realized something. I didn't care why, not anymore. All I cared about was making sure I came out of this with my daughter and my dignity intact. The answers wouldn't change anything. The why didn't matter. Everything else could burn. The next 3 weeks were the hardest performance of my life. Every morning I kissed Irene Kitai like nothing had changed. I asked about her day, listened to her lies, nodded in all the right places. I made dinner on Wednesdays, her favorite chicken piccata with roasted vegetables, and pretended not to notice when she checked her phone under the table. I played with Lily in the evenings, building block towers, and reading stories about talking animals. I was present, engaged, visibly devoted, everything a family court judge would want to see in a primary caregiver. Because that's what this was really about. Custody. California is a no-fault divorce state. Infidelity doesn't directly affect asset division, but custody, that's a different game entirely. And if I could prove that Irene had compromised our daughter's safety by bringing her into proximity with her affair partners, I'd have leverage no amount of crying in a courtroom could overcome. I consulted with a family attorney named Patricia Webb, sharp, fatical, recommended by a co-worker who'd been through a messy divorce. We met at her office in the financial district, surrounded by law books and diplomas, while I laid out what I discovered. Patricia was in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and the kind of face that had seen too many guacinlaches cities surprised by anything. She listened without interruption as I walked her through my documentation, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "This is extensive," she said finally, flipping through my timeline. "I've been practicing family law for 25 years, and I've never seen evidence this comprehensive. I'm good at my shot." Clearly, she sat down the papers and studied me over the top of her reading glasses. "How did you obtain this information?" "Through my job. I work for the dating app where my wife has a profile. Did you violate any company policies?" "Technically, accessing user data for personal hemplaces is against policy. But I didn't alter anything, didn't share raw data externally, and didn't access anything I wouldn't have seen during a normal audit." Patricia tapped a pen against her legal pad, thinking. "The terms of service, did your wife agree to them?" "Yes." Section 12.44 explicitly states that user data may be reviewed for safety and compliance purposes, and there's a clause prohibiting use of the platform for infidelity while in a committed relationship. So she violated the terms by signing up in the first place. Exactly. Patricia leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who just spotted wounded prey. "Here's what I recommend. Don't confront her. Don't change your behavior. Document everything, your involvement with your daughter, your wife's patterns, any further lies you can verify. When we file, we hit hard and fast before she has time to craft a counter-narrative or hide assets, and custody with evidence that she brought your child into proximity with her affair partner." Patricia's smile widened. "Primary custody is almost certain. Supervised visitation for her until she demonstrates stability, maybe longer depending on how the judge reacts to that 20 minutes message." "What about the house finances? You mentioned a prenuptial agreement." "Pull it out. Read it carefully. Most prenups have infidelity clauses, and given what you've documented, she forfeits 60% of marital assets and waives spousal support." Patricia actually laughed. "Mr. Callahan, your wife is going to regret every single decision she's made since March. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt since that Friday night. Control. For 8 months, Irene had been manipulating my reality, feeding me lies, treating our marriage like a stage set she could walk away from whenever she wanted. And the script had flipped. Now I was the one in control. "You okay?" Hannah Torres asked me one morning, sliding into the chair across from my desk. "You've been staring at that monitor like it owes you money." Hannah was a UX researcher at Kindred Spark, one of the few co-workers I genuinely liked. We'd been work friends for 3 years. Coffee breaks, complaints about management, the occasional lunch when neither of us wanted to eat alone. "Just tired," I said. "Lily's been having nightmares." "Kids are tough," she sipped her coffee. "If you need to talk about anything for a moment," I almost told her. The words were right there, pressing against my teeth, desperate to escape. But I couldn't risk it. Not yet. Information was my weapon, and I couldn't let it leak before I was ready to use it. Instead, I asked a question that had been nagging at me. Hypothetically, if a user violated our terms of service, say using the platform for affairs while claiming to be in a committed relationship, what's the enforcement process? Hannah raised an eyebrow. Permanent ban. Legal requires documentation, but we've done it before. Why? Just curious. Ran into an edge case during the audit. She didn't look entirely convinced, but she let it go. That was one of the things I liked about Hannah. She knew when not to push. At home, I started noticing patterns I'd been too blind or too trusting to see before. Irene showered immediately when she came home. Now, before she'd kick off her shoes, pour a glass of wine, complain about traffic. Now, the first thing she did was head for the bathroom, washing away whatever evidence she thought she was carrying. Her phone was always face down. When had that started? I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, but suddenly I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen her screen. She'd started going to the gym again. A 6 a.m. spin class, specifically. Nathan Perry taught a 6 a.m. spin class. One night, she was scrolling her phone on the couch while I pretended to watch television. Without looking up, she said, "Oh, Derek from Sterling sent another email about the lease meeting. You should probably go to that." My blood went cold. "You know Derek. I've seen the emails." She still wasn't looking at me. "You mentioned it." I hadn't mentioned it. Not once. My work emails were on my work laptop, which she didn't have access to. She knew his name because she'd been moaning it in hotel rooms for 6 months. I kept my voice neutral. "Yeah, I'll check my calendar." That night, just as she fell asleep, I went to my office and added another entry to my documentation. Then I opened a new file and started building something special. I called it a marriage in data. January-November 2024. The visualization took weeks to perfect. I'm not just good at data analysis, I'm exceptional. It's why Kindred Spark hired me, why they promoted me, why they paid me enough to buy a house in San Francisco. And now I was using every skill I had to construct the most damning presentation of my career. Slide 1. Timeline overview. A horizontal axis showing each of Irene's documented lies. Green dots for where she said she was. Red dots for where she actually was. Color-coded pins for each of her 3 affair partners. Slide 2. Frequency analysis. Bar graphs showing messages per week peaked at 200 during month 4. Average response time to affair partners 3.2 minutes. Average response time to me 47 minutes. Slide 3. The lie correlation matrix, a table with 47 rows. Date, stated location. Actual location, duration of lie, affair partner present, yes or no. Slide 4. Proximity alerts. A heat map of San Francisco showing where Irene's phone and her partner's phones had been within 500 feet of each other simultaneously. Heavy concentrations at the Marker Hotel, Marina Green, and a parking garage on Mission Street. Slide 5. The Lily factor. This was my nuclear option. 3 instances where Irene had brought our daughter to a location where Derek Whitmore was present. GPS data showing his phone within an hundred feet of Lily for extended periods. And that message she's playing on the swings, "We have 20 minutes," embedded as a screenshot. Was this about revenge? Maybe partially. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want Irene to suffer the way I'd been suffering, to feel the same betrayal that had been eating me alive for weeks. But mostly it was about Lily, about making sure my daughter ended up with a parent who would never ever use her as cover for something shameful. I also reviewed our prenuptial agreement. We'd signed it 6 years ago at Irene's insistence. She'd been worried about my student debt. I was still paying off my master's degree, and she came from money. Her father had pressured her into protecting herself, the key clause. In the event of dissolution due to documented infidelity, the offending party forfeits claim to 60% of jointly acquired assets and waives rights to spousal support. Irene had never imagined being on the wrong end of that clause. Patricia reviewed the document and confirmed what I'd suspected. With your documentation, she gets nothing but what she brought in. Minimum 20% of marital assets and custody. Primary custody for you is almost guaranteed. Given the evidence involving your daughter, she'll be lucky to get supervised visitation. I nodded, feeling the pieces click into place. I want to file on a specific day. What day? The day Derek Whitmore comes to our office for the lease renewal meeting. Patricia's smile was sharp. I like how you think. I set the date, December 14th. The lease meeting was scheduled for 10:00 a.m. I would file for divorce immediately after, ensuring Irene was served while I was establishing an unshakable alibi surrounded by witnesses. But first, I had one more piece of research to complete. Derek Whitmore's wife, Carolyn, was 36, an interior designer with a robust Instagram presence. Lots of photos of her kids, her renovated kitchen, her perfect life. She had no idea her husband spent his lunch breaks in hotel rooms with other men's wives. Grant Ellison's ex-wife, Megan, lived in Chicago. They appeared to co-parent amicably. But Grant was dating someone new. I'd seen her in his app activity. And that new woman might be interested to know about his escape with married women. Nathan Perry was single. No wife to inform, no girlfriend to hurt, but his gym had a strict fraternization policy, and his messages to Renee J referenced training sessions that definitely weren't about cardio. I filed this information away for later. The collateral damage would be precise and devastating. December 14th arrived cold and clear. I woke up at 6, made breakfast for Lily, kissed Ianka Pie like any other morning. Big meeting today, I said. Might be late. Good luck, she said, Notche clears throat, looking up from her phone. I dropped Lily at preschool, hangered her tight, told her I loved her. She waved at me through the window as I drove away, and I had to grip the steering wheel hard to keep my hands from shaking. At the office, I prepped for the meeting like a man walking into battle, which in a way I was. Conference room B, 10 a.m., Sterling Properties on one side, Kenton Spark on the other. Our CFO led the discussion, walking through lease terms and building maintenance issues. I was there officially as senior technical assistant. Questions. A flimsy excuse, but no one questioned it. Derek Whitmore sat across from me, confident and well-dressed, his wedding ring catching the light every time he gestured. About 15 minutes in, he looked directly at me and smiled. Good to see you again. Think we've crossed paths in the elevator.
I'm sure we have,
I said, keeping my voice pleasant. Professional, the voice of a man who had no idea his wife had been sleeping with the person across the table for that part of a year. Derek held my gaze for a moment, something flickering behind his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe, or the particular smugness of a man who thought he was getting away with something. Then he turned back to the CFO and continued discussing square footage rates. I watched him through the rest of the meeting. The way he leaned back in his chair, comfortable in his authority, the practiced charm he deployed with our facilities manager. The wedding ring he hadn't bothered to remove even while maintaining profiles on 3 different dating apps. He had no idea what was coming. The meeting ended. Everyone shook hands. As Derek was gathering his materials, I stepped closer to him, positioning myself between him and the door. Derek, quick question. He looked up, still smiling. Sure. What's up? Do you know a woman named Irene? Irene Callahan? The smile froze. For just a second, maybe 2, his face went completely white. I watched the blood drain out of his cheeks, watched his pupils dilate, watched the confident mask shatter into pure animal terror. Then he recovered, the mask sliding back into place, but too late. I'd seen it. Doesn't ring a bell, he said. His voice was steady. His hands were not strange. I once mentioned you. I kept my voice casual, conversational, the way you might discuss the weather. Apparently, you two have met at the marker Hotel 11 times, if I'm counting right. Room 412 seems to be a favorite. Derek's briefcase slipped from his fingers. Papers scattered across the conference table. He scrambled to gather them, not looking at me, hands shaking badly enough that it took him 3 tries to get everything back in order. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. But his voice had gone thin and ready, all the confident authority stripped away. "Sure you do." I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. "Her profile name is Renee J. You called her your Tuesday surprise. You met her at the same park where I proposed to her, which I'll admit shows a certain creative flair." Derek finally looked at me. His face was grey. "Listen, I don't know what she told you, but she didn't tell me anything. She doesn't know I know." I smiled pleasantly. "Not yet. Anyway." Derek grabbed his briefcase and practically ran from the room, mumbling something about being late for another meeting. The CFO gave me a strange look. I just shrugged. "Must have had something urgent," I said. "Must have." The CFO agreed, looking unconvinced. At 12:30, Patricia filed the divorce papers. At Henstein, Irene was served at home. A process server knocked on our door, handed her the documents, and recorded her reaction for legal purposes. I wasn't there, but I could imagine it perfectly. The confusion, the dawning horror, the scramble to understand how her carefully compartmentalized worlds had suddenly collided. At 1:47, my phone started ringing. Irene called 17 times. I didn't answer. I let each call go to voicemail, watched her name flash on the screen over and over, imagined her growing more desperate with each unanswered ring. She left 3 messages. The first was angry. "Victor, what the hell is this? You can't just serve me with divorce papers without even talking in CAC now." The second was pleading. "Victor, please, I know you're upset, but we can work this out. Whatever you think you know, just call me, please." The third was panic, raw and unfiltered. "How did you find out? Victor, how did you? Oh God, please, just please call me." I saved all 3 messages. Documentation. At 10:30, I picked Lily up from press school. Her teacher, Mrs. Martinez, noted that I'd been coming more often lately. "It's wonderful to see you so involved, Mr. Callahan. Lily talks about you all the time. She's my whole world," I said and meant it. Lily ran into my arms, babbling about finger paints and snack time, completely oblivious to the fact that her family was falling apart around her. I held her a little longer than usual, breathing in the smell of apple juice and play, before buckling her into her car seat. At 400, I arrived at my brother Michael's house with Lily and 2 suitcases of essentials. Michael met us at the door, his face grim but determined. "Guest room's all set up," he said. "I put some toys in there for Lily and beer in the fridge for you." "Thanks, Mike." He pulled me into a hug. Awkward the way hugs between brothers often are, but genuine. "You're going to get through this, I know." At 6, Irene arrived at Michael's house. I heard the screech of tires, the slam of a car door, the rapid click of heels on the front walk. Then the doorbell, urgent and insistent, followed by pounding when no one answered immediately. Michael looked at me from the kitchen doorway. "You wanting to handle this?" "No, I've got it." I opened the door. Irene stood on the porch, mascara streaked down her face, her hair wild, her hands shaking. She looked like Lynn's world had just collapsed, which was accurate. "Victor." Her voice cracked on my name. "Where's Lily?" "I want to see my daughter." "She's asleep," I said, standing in the doorway, blocking her entry. "It's been a long day. She's my daughter. You can't just take her." "I didn't take her. I filed for divorce and relocated to a temporary residence with our child as advised by my attorney. You were served with papers that explained the custody arrangement we're requesting. Victor, please." She was crying now, reaching for my arm. Her fingers were ice cold, trembling. "Can we just talk about this? Whatever you think you know. I know everything. Irene, 47 lies, 3 men, 8 months. She went pale, her whole body swaying like she might collapse. How? It doesn't matter how. What matters is that I have documentation. All of it. And I have the messages you sent to Derek while our daughter was on the swings." She actually staggered backward, nearly tripping on the porch-tet. "That's not I would never. We have 20 minutes," I quoted. "Your words, your phone, your daughter playing in the park, while you planned your next trip to a hotel room. It wasn't like that." Tears were streaming down her face. "Derek and I were just talking. I would never have let anything happen to Lily. Never. For 47 minutes while she played alone, while you told her to stay on the swing so you could have time with your affair partner. Victor, please." She was openly sobbing. "Now, I made a mistake. I know that. But she's my baby. She's my little girl. She's my little girl, too. And I'm going to make sure she grows up with at least one parent who hasn't lied to her face for 8 months." Irene lunged for the doorway, trying to push past me. Michael appeared behind me, placing a firm hand on my shoulder in support. "Irene," he said, his voice calm but hard. "You need to leave now. You don't get to tell me what to do. This is between me and my husband, ex-husband." I corrected, "Or he will be soon enough." At 6:15, Patricia sent a cease and desist regarding harassment. When Irene still refused to leave, Michael had to call the police. She was escorted out. 3 minutes later, still crying, still begging, still unable to accept that her carefully constructed double life had finally collapsed. At 8, Carolyn Whitmore received an anonymous email with a single attachment, a data visualization showing her husband's affair timeline. Names, dates, locations, frequency, everything except Irene's identity. I wasn't a monster, and Carolyn didn't deserve to have her family's destruction tied to mine more than necessary. I waited. The response came faster than I expected. Carolyn Whitmore didn't cry. She didn't call Derek. She called a lawyer. Within 24 hours, Derek was served with divorce papers, and his financials were being subpoenaed. I know this because Carolyn posted on a private forum for betrayed spouses, one I discovered during my research phase. Her post read, "Received anonymous proof of my husband's 8-month affair with a married woman." The data is terrifying. I know everything. The post went semi-viral in divorce support communities. Screenshots circulated. Someone connected the dots to Sterling Properties, and then to Derek Whitmore specifically. By the end of the week, Derek's affair was off his tausit, trending on internal Slack channels, whispered about in break rooms and elevator rides. His career was in free fall. The company didn't want the liability of keeping an executive whose dirty laundry was all over the internet. That night, Irene texted me for the first time since the cease and desist. "How did you know?" I didn't respond. The mediation happened 3 weeks later. Ninchal office, downtown San Francisco. Conference table, water pictures, the artificial calm of people about to tear each other apart with lawyers instead of teeth. Irene sat across her knee, flanked by her attorney, a guy named David Hang, who looked like he'd already realized this case was unwinnable. Irene looked terrible, not dramatically so. She was still pitiful, still put together, but there was something hollow behind her eyes that hadn't been there before. Weight loss, probably. Sleepless nights, the specific exhaustion of a person watching their carefully constructed lies crumble around them. Good. Before we begin, David Hang said, his voice carefully neutral. My client would like to make a statement. Patricia glanced at me. I nodded slightly. Let her talk. Irene cleared her throat. Her hands were trembling. Victor, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But I want you to understand what happened wasn't about you. It wasn't about anything you did or didn't do. I was lost and I made terrible choices, and I'll regret them for the rest of my life. I said nothing, just watched her. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she continued. I'm asking you to consider Lily, to consider what's best for her. She needs both her parents. She needs stability. And this, she gestured to the lawyers, the conference room, the whole ugly apparatus of divorce. This isn't stability, still nothing from me. Irene's composure cracked slightly. Victor, please say something. I let the silence stretch. Then, are you finished? She flinched like I'd slapped her. Patricia opened her laptop. My client has prepared a summary of the evidence supporting his position. We call it Exhibit A. She projected it onto the conference room screen, and I began to narrate. This is a timeline of my wife's activity on the dating platform Kindred Spark, which my company operates. I discovered her profile during a routine audit, which is part of my job responsibilities. This is illegal, Irene interrupted, her voice shrill. He spied on me. Your client agreed to the app's terms of service, Patricia said calmly, which include consent to data review for compliance campuses. She violated Section 12.4, using the platform for infidelity while in a committed relationship. Every piece of data being presented was held at her explicit consent. I continued slide by slide. I walked through the evidence, the lie correlation matrix, the geolocation heat map, the frequency analysis showing how she responded to her affair partners in minutes, but took nearly an hour to respond to me. And then I reached the Lily slides. On 3 separate occasions, I said, my wife brought our daughter to locations where she was meeting her affair partner. This includes one instance when, according to her messages, and I quote, she's playing on the swings. We have 20 minutes. Irene started crying. David Huang leaned over and whispered something to her. She shook her head violently. My client is willing to settle, Patricia said. Primary custody to Mr. Callahan. Ms. Callahan receives supervised visitation until she completes a parenting course. Per the prenuptial agreement, she forfeits 60% of marital assets and waives spousal support. In exchange, Mr. Callahan agrees not to submit this evidence in open court where it would become public record. David Hang asked for a recess. When they came back, David had a different expression, desperate, like a man about to play his last card, even though he knew it wouldn't work. My client alleges that Easton Callahan obtained this data through his employment, violating company policy. If he submits this evidence, she will file a complaint with his employer, potentially costing him his job. I spoke for the first time directly. I've already informed my employer's legal team about the situation. They've reviewed my actions and confirmed I violated no laws. They've also initiated a terms of service review of my wife's account, which will result in a permanent ban. I pulled out a letter and slid it across the table. This is written confirmation from Kindred Spark's general counsel that my employment is secure. David Hang picked up the letter, read it, put it down. He had nothing. The settlement was signed that afternoon. Irene got supervised visitation every other weekend, 20% of marital assets, the car, no spousal support. I got primary custody of Lily, the house, though I planned to sell it, my retirement accounts intact, my dignity. As we walked out, Irene grabbed my arm. Her eyes were red, her voice ragged. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I'd loved, who I'd built a life with, who'd given me the greatest gift I'd ever received, and then treated it like an inconvenience. "I did," I said, "every night for 8 months. You just weren't listening. You were messaging Derek." I walked out. I didn't look back. 6 weeks after the settlement, the ripple effects were still spreading. Derek Whitmore's divorce was finalized. Carolyn took the house, both cars, and 65% of assets. Sterling Properties let him go. Apparently, his affair becoming office gossip was a liability they didn't want to manage. Last I heard, he was on Bumble. His profile said, "Recently single, looking for something real." Grant Ellison's new girlfriend left him after receiving an anonymous DM. The surgeon was alone again, sending angry messages to Irene, blaming her for ruining his life. I know because I saw them in the data before I stopped checking. Nathan Perry was fired from his gym after an anonymous tip about inappropriate relationships with clients. He was coaching private clients now, his promising fitness empire reduced to house calls. He'd never known Irene was married. Part of me almost felt bad for him. Almost. Irene is living with her mother in Modesto, working part-time at a boutique owned by a family friend. Her Kindred Spark profile was permanently banned, and the betrayed spouses community had proven surprisingly effective at flagging her accounts on other platforms. She saw Lily every other weekend under supervision. She cried every time. I received a letter in the mail handwritten on cream stationery. "I don't know who you are, but I know you're the one who sent me that data. I wanted to say thank you. I was living a lie and didn't even know it. My kids will grow up knowing their father isn't who he pretended to be, but they'll grow up knowing the truth. That's because of you. I hope you're finding peace. I'm starting to CW. I put the letter in a drawer. There was nothing to say. 6 months after the divorce, I was in a different house, a townhouse closer to Michael's place, cooking dinner while Lily drew at the kitchen table. The sun was setting over San Francisco, painting everything gold. "Daddy," Lily said, not looking up from her crayons. "What's an algorithm?" I smiled despite myself. "It's a set of rules that helps you find answers, like finding the right crayon." "Exactly like that." She nodded seriously and went back to her drawing. Purple trees, orange sky, a house with a smiling sun in the corner. My phone buzzed. A text from Hannah Torres. "Still on for dinner, running late. Save me some fun." Hannah and I had been spending more time together lately. Work friends at first, then something more. We weren't dating exactly. I wasn't ready for that. Might never be ready, but there was something there. Connection, forward motion, the possibility of a future that didn't hurt to imagine. I typed back, "Always." Then I went back to stirring the pasta, watching my daughter draw, listening to the ordinary sounds of an ordinary evening. The data had shown me the truth, but it was the human variables, trust, patience, moving forward, that was showing me what came next. Outside, the last of the sunlight faded and the city lights flickered on one by one. Tanaran, there would be new challenges, new uncertainties. Lily would ask about her mother, and I'd answer as honestly as I could. Hannah and I would figure out what we were becoming. The wounds would keep healing slower than I wanted, faster than I feared. But that was tomorrow. Tonight there was pasta and crayons and a text from someone who made me smile. It was enough. The following weekend, Irene picked up Lily for her supervised visit. Irene's mother, never my biggest fan, waited in the car while Irene stood on my doorstep trying to arrange her face into something neutral. "She's excited," I said, handing over Lily's overnight bag. "We packed her favorite stuffed animal, thank you." Irene's voice was stiff, formal. "I'll have her back by Sunday at 5. Lily bounded down the stairs, grabbed her mother's hand, and started chattering about the art project she wanted to do. For a moment, watching them walk to the car, I felt something complicated twist in my chest. Not regret, never that. Just the ghost of what could have been if Irene had made different choices. If I had noticed sooner, if any of the 1,000 small moments that led to this had gone differently. But they hadn't, and dwelling on hypotheticals was just another form of lying to yourself. I closed the door and went back inside. That night, Hannah came over for dinner. She'd brought wine, a good Pinot Noir from Soma, and I'd made chicken piccata muscle memory from all those Wednesday dinners when I'd still been performing the role of happy husband. "This is incredible," Hannah said, taking a second helping. "Where'd you learn to cook like this? Self-taught mostly." "My mother wasn't exactly the nurturing type." "That explains a lot, actually." I raised an eyebrow. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing bad." She smiled, swirling her wine. "You're just very self-contained, like you built yourself from scratch." "That's probably accurate." We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Hannah set down her fork and looked at me with that direct gaze that had unnerved me when we first met. "Can I ask you something personal?" "You can ask." "I might not answer." "Fair." She hesitated. "When you found out about Irene, the whole thing, the data, all of it, did you ever consider just walking away, not doing the whole scorched earth thing?" It was a question I'd asked myself more times than I could count late at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd gone too far, if there had been a kinder path to the same destination. "I considered it," I said, "for about 10 minutes. What changed your mind?" "Lily." The name came out soft, reverent. "She brought our daughter to meet her affair partners, Hannah. Used her as cover. That message, we have 20 minutes. That was about our child. About using her as a prop so Irene could steal time with another man." Hannah nodded slowly. "I get that if it had just been the cheating." I shook my head. "I don't know. Maybe I would have handled it differently, tried counseling, attempted some kind of amicable split. But the moment she involved Lily, there was no coming back from that." "Do you think Irene understood that?" That was the line she crossed. I think Irene didn't think it at all. That was the problem. I finished my wine, set the glass down carefully. She was so caught up in her own needs, her own desires, that our daughter became an afterthought, a logistical challenge to work around. And you couldn't let that stand. No, I couldn't. Hannah reached across the table and took my hand. Her fingers were warm, her grip firm. "For what it's worth," she said, "I think you did the right thing. Some days I'm sure of it. Other days I shrugged. Other days I wonder if there was a version of this where everyone walked away a little less damaged. Maybe, but probably not." She squeezed my hand. "Some situations don't have clean exits, Victor. You just have to pick the least bad option and live with it. Speaking from experience, my divorce wasn't as dramatic as yours. But yeah, there were choices I second-guessed for years." She smiled a little sad. "Eventually, you just have to put down the weight and keep moving. I'm working on that, I know you are." She let go of my hand, picked up her fork again. "Now, tell me about this new project at work. I heard rumors about a machine learning initiative. Just like that, we were back to normal conversation. Work gossip and industry news, and the comfortable rhythm of two people who'd figured out how to enjoy each other's company. It wasn't romance exactly, or maybe it was the beginning of romance. The part that comes before anyone admits what they're feeling. Either way, it was good. It was enough. 3 months later, Lily started kindergarten. I took photos, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Lily in her new backpack standing by the front door. Lily holding my hand as we walked to the car. Lily at the classroom door, turning back to wave before disappearing inside. I texted the best ones to Irene because despite everything, she was still Lily's mother, and our daughter deserved to have both parents present in her milestones. Irene's response came 20 minutes later. "Thank you for sharing these. She looks beautiful. No drama, no manipulation, just a mother grateful to see her child growing up. Maybe time really did heal things. Or maybe Irene had finally started seeing a decent therapist. Either way, our interactions had gotten less fraught over the months. We developed a functional co-parenting relationship. Not friendly exactly, but workable, professional. The supervised visitation had ended after Irene completed her court-ordered parenting course. She now had Lily every other weekend. No supervision required. The first unsupervised visit had been terrifying for me. 12 hours of imagining worst-case scenarios. But Lily had come home happy and healthy, chattering about the pancakes Grandma made and the movie she'd watched with Mommy. Kids were resilient, more resilient than adults usually. That afternoon, Patricia called me with a question. "Victor, I've got an unusual request. Would you be willing to consult on a case?" "What kind of case?" "Another data scientist found evidence of his wife's infidelity through work systems similar to your situation. He's looking for guidance on how to document without crossing legal lines." I thought about it. The man I'd been a year ago, obsessive, furious, consumed by the need for revenge, would have said yes immediately, would have relished the chance to help another betrayed husband burn everything to the ground. But I wasn't that anhang, or at least I was trying not to be. "I'll talk to him," I said, "but I'm going to tell him something you might not like." "What's that?" "That wing isn't everything. That sometimes the best outcome is the one where your kid doesn't have to watch their parents destroy each other. That the data can show you what happened, but it can't tell you what to do about it." Patricia was quiet for a moment. "That's surprisingly wise. I've had time to think. All right, I'll set up the call." She paused. "Victor, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're in a better place. Thanks, Patricia." "Me too." A few months after that, Hannah and I had our first real date. Not dinner at my place or drinks after work. An actual date with reservations and getting dressed up and all the nervous anticipation that came with admitting you wanted to be more than friends. We went to a small Italian restaurant in North Beach, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles and wine bottles. Hannah wore a blue dress that made her eyes look like the ocean. I wore a suit I hadn't touched since before the divorce. "You look nice," she said when I picked her up. "You look beautiful." She smiled and something in my chest loosened, something that had been clenched tight for months, maybe years. At dinner, we talked about everything and nothing. Her childhood in New Mexico, my dreams of starting my own company someday, the books we'd been reading, the shows we'd been watching, the small details of daily life that somehow mattered more than the big dramatic moments. "Can I ask you something?" she said over tiramisu. "You can always ask before you ask. Just ask." She laughed. "Fair point." She took a breath. "What are we doing here, Victor? And I don't mean the restaurant. I know what you mean." So I considered the question, considered all the ways I could deflect, protect myself, keep the walls up that had served me so well during the worst year of my life. Then I looked at Hannah, really looked at her, and decided to try something different. "I like you," I said, "a lot more than I expected to, honestly, and I'm terrified of screwing this up, because I'm still putting myself back together, and I don't know if I have enough pieces to be what you two sends." Hannah reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm not looking for perfect, Victor. I'm looking for honest, for someone who shows up and tries. I can do that, then that's enough." She smiled. "We'll figure out the rest as we go." A year after the divorce, I got a notification that Derek Whitmore's Pentel Creme file had been deleted. I'm not sure how I ended up with that information. Some artifact of the data audit systems I'd built, probably some ghost in the machine that hadn't stopped tracking the people who'd intersected with my wife's betrayal. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated. Here was proof that my revenge had worked, that the man who helped destroy my marriage was still struggling to put his life back together. Instead, I felt tired. I deleted the notification, disabled the alert system. Whatever happened to Derek Whitmore from this point on was no longer my concern. Son weights you just had to put down. That weekend, Lily came home from Irene's with a drawing. "Look, Daddy, I made it for you." I took the paper carefully, examined the crayon masterpiece with appropriate semity. It showed 3 figures, a big one, a medium one, and a small one with yellow hair. That had to be Lily. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Who are these people?" "That's you." She pointed to the big one. "And that's Hannah." She pointed to the medium one. "And that's me." My heart did something complicated. "You drew Hannah. She's nice. She brings me candy and she makes you smile." I knelt down. "So I was at Lily's level. Do you like Hannah?" Lily nodded seriously. "She doesn't try to key on me. She's just Hannah, and you're happier when she's around." Kids noticed everything, every change in mood, every shift in atmosphere. They were like tiny emotional parameters, constantly calibrating to the adults around them. "I am happier when she's around," I admitted. "But you know your mommy is always your mommy, right? No matter what." "I know, Daddy." Lily rolled her eyes with the exasperation only a 5-year-old could muster. "Hannah is your friend. Mommy is my mommy. It's not complicated, despite myself." "You're right. It's not complicated. Can we have ice cream after dinner?" "Okay." She ran off to play, leaving me holding her drawing. I looked at those 3 figures for a long time. The big one, slightly lopsided. The medium one, smiling. The small one with yellow hair standing between them. Not a complete family. Not the one I'd imagined when Irene and I got married all those years ago, but a family nonetheless, assembled from the wreckage of what came before. I hung the drawing on the refrigerator right at eye level where I'd see it every morning. 6 months later, Hannah moved in. It wasn't a dramatic decision, no grand romantic gesture, no agonizing discussions about commitment and timing. She'd been staying over more and more, her toiletries gradually colonizing my bathroom, her coffee mug claiming a permanent spot in my kitchen cabinet. One day I looked around and realized she was already there in every way that mattered. "We should make this official," I said over breakfast one morning. Hannah looked up from her tablet. "Make what official?" "You hear us." She smiled slowly. "Victor Callahan, are you asking me to move in?" "I think I'm acknowledging that you already have romantic." "I try." She reached across the table, took my hand. interlaced her fingers with mine. I'd like that, making it official. Good, but we should tell Lily first. Make sure she's okay with it. Already asked her, I admitted last week. Hannah's eyebrows shot up, and she said, and I quote, finally, Hannah makes better pancakes than you. Hannah laughed. A real laugh, warm and surprised. That kid is something else. She really is. That night, we celebrated with pizza and a movie. Lily's choice, some animated thing about talking animals, and I sat on the couch with my daughter on one side and Hannah on the other. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Not the absence of problems or the promise that everything would be easy from now on. Just a quiet, steady certainty that I was exactly where I was supposed to be with exactly the people I was supposed to be with. The data had shown me my wife's betrayal, but it took a lot longer to learn what I actually needed to know. That endings can become beginnings. That destruction can clear ground for something new. That the algorithm of life is more complex than any model could predict. Lily fell asleep halfway through the movie, her head in my lap. Hannah's hand found mine in the darkness. You okay? She whispered. Yeah, I said. I really am. And for the first time since that Friday night when my whole world collapsed, Heinen and clean.